A drill sergeant spent weeks bullying me for being weak, not knowing I was an undercover JAG officer investigating his conduct. Sergeant Terrence singled me out from the first day of basic training at Fort Benning. While he yelled at everyone, with me it felt deeply personal. He'd make me do extra push-ups while others rested, force me to clean already spotless equipment, and scream inches from my face about how I didn't belong in the army. The other recruits started avoiding me completely, afraid they'd catch his attention if they seemed friendly. Caleb whispered during chow that maybe I should just quit before things got worse. Owen suggested reporting him to the company commander, but everyone knew that would only make the harassment more brutal and creative. What struck me as genuinely odd were his incredibly specific complaints about my behavior. He'd accused me of asking too many questions about military protocols when I'd barely spoken during training sessions, claimed I was secretly taking notes during instruction when I wasn't, constantly wrote me up for minor infractions that other recruits committed constantly, without any consequences whatsoever. During our third week, he started making strange, pointed comments about my background and motivations, said he could tell I thought I was smarter than everyone else in the platoon, that I was exactly the type who'd try to get people in trouble with higher-ups, that guys like me always thought they knew better than their superiors and would stab people in the back. I hadn't told anyone about my law degree or previous military experience. My official file showed the same basic background information as everyone else's, but somehow he seemed to know specific things about my personality and history that weren't documented anywhere in my paperwork. The harassment escalated significantly when he started isolating me during training exercises and field work. He'd deliberately send me to different stations alone while others worked in groups, made me repeat basic drills endlessly while claiming my form was completely wrong, even when it matched everyone else's technique perfectly. During week 5, he accused me of secretly recording conversations with my phone. He demanded to search my bunk, footlocker, and even my personal belongings thoroughly. Found absolutely nothing suspicious, but used the search as an excuse to completely destroy my sleeping area and make me rebuild it 3 times from scratch. That night around midnight, I overheard him outside the barracks talking on his phone in hushed tones. He told someone that the current situation was getting unnecessarily complicated, that I wasn't responding to pressure the way they'd expected me to, that maybe they'd chosen completely the wrong psychological approach for this particular case. He specifically mentioned something about proper documentation and being extremely careful about what details got officially written down, about making absolutely sure everything appeared completely legitimate if anyone higher up started asking pointed questions later. The way he talked suggested this wasn't random hazing or typical drill sergeant behavior. This was deliberately targeted, carefully planned, and completely systematic. The next morning, he pulled me aside before formation with a completely different approach. His whole demeanor had changed dramatically. Instead of his usual screaming, he spoke quietly and almost threateningly, said some people needed to learn their proper place the hard way, that I could make things much easier on myself if I just accepted that I didn't belong here, and quietly requested an immediate transfer. When I didn't respond or show any sign of backing down, he smiled in a way that made my skin crawl and said he had proven methods of making problematic people disappear from his unit permanently, that he'd successfully done it before and he wouldn't hesitate to do it again. That's when I finally realized he had absolutely no idea who I really was or why I was actually there.
I stopped signing for my deaf best friend after 4 years, and I picked the worst possible moment to do it. When my best friend Lucky lost his hearing in a car accident, I enrolled in sign language classes before he even left the hospital. By the time he could look at me without crying, I could sign faster than his own brother. Here's what made it ridiculous. Lucky reads lips perfectly. He uses apps that turn spoken words into text on his phone. He functions completely fine on his own. However, his girlfriend Diane decided that real love meant making everything about his disability, and suddenly, I was expected to interpret every conversation, even when Lucky was handling it himself. It started at their housewarming party. Lucky was chatting with my wife, reading her lips, laughing. Diane rushed over and grabbed my arm. "You need to sign for him. He's missing things." He wasn't missing anything, but she kept pushing me between them, insisting I translate words he'd already understood. I kept doing it because every time I tried to say no, Lucky would get this look, like he was a problem, like he was ruining everyone's night, so I kept signing. Diane started inviting herself to every gathering after that, announcing I was Lucky's interpreter, pointing at me without using my name. At my brother's barbecue, she told my mom it was inspiring how I'd dedicated myself to helping the less fortunate. My mom's face changed. Suddenly she looked at Lucky like he was a charity case, like she'd never seen how fragile he was before. Lucky caught it. He stared at the ground and didn't speak for the rest of the night. He'd known my mom for 6 years. The worst was my daughter's first birthday party. My parents flew in from Ohio. My in-laws drove 4 hours. I spent the entire afternoon signing conversations Lucky didn't need, because every time I tried to hold my daughter, Diane would tap my shoulder. "Lucky is talking to your uncle. Go translate." At one point, she patted Lucky on the head like a dog and told my mom, "He's doing so well today. Sometimes loud places overwhelm him." I watched something in his eyes go flat. I got so busy translating, I missed my daughter's cake. I missed the presents. I got 0 photos with my daughter from her first birthday. My wife stopped speaking to me that night. She told me 3 times to stop enabling their behavior. She just looked at me and said, "You're choosing their comfort over your family." She wasn't wrong. Then Diane's sister got engaged, and Diane made it clear I was going to the party. "It'll look weird if Lucky shows up alone." I should have said no. When I showed up to Diane's parents' house, the place was packed with over 50 people. Half of them were family Lucky had never met. Diane worked the room, introducing Lucky to relatives, except she wasn't introducing him, she was introducing me. "This is Lucky's interpreter. He's deaf, so he speaks through his friend here." Cousin after cousin, they'd look past Lucky and talk to me like he was furniture. One woman asked what Lucky did for work. Diane cut in, "Something with computers. Tell her he's very smart despite everything." Lucky's face went still. He'd heard that phrase from doctors, from strangers, never from someone who was supposed to love him. When Diane's father stood up to toast the engagement, the room got quiet. Diane leaned over to Lucky, loud enough for me to hear, "Don't worry, I'll have him translate so you don't miss anything." Then she looked at me. "Make sure you sign everything. I want Lucky to feel included. You know how hard this is for him, being around normal people." She expected me to keep signing, to make her look like a hero for dating a disabled man. I stopped. My hands dropped. Lucky looked confused. Diane frowned. "What are you doing? Keep going." "No," I said. said. People turned, her face flushed. What do you mean, no? Lucky doesn't need anything, I said. He reads lips. He uses apps. He handled conversations fine before you decided he couldn't. You're the one who needs this. You need everyone to see how good you are for loving someone broken. Except he's not broken, and I'm not your prop. I turned to Lucky. She calls you her deaf boyfriend to everyone. I signed directly. She tells people you're smart despite everything. She told her mother you were lucky to have someone willing to deal with your situation. Lucky looked like a man who knew this already, but was only seeing the full picture until now. Diane tried to recover, forced a laugh. He's exaggerating. Lucky, tell them. Lucky didn't move. Her smile crumbled. I grabbed my jacket and walked out. Diane tried to distract everyone, but Lucky left right after me, and half the room followed. Lucky told me a few days later. I broke up with her, he signed. I knew how she talked about me. I just thought maybe that was as good as it gets. Someone who can tolerate this part of me. I told him, being deaf is the least interesting thing about you and doesn't define who you are.